What would you do if you knew anything was possible for you? My name is Holly Moore and I started an events company 10 years ago from scratch at my dining room table. Join me over the next few weeks and hopefully at the end of it, you will see why anything truly is possible for you. Welcome again to the Anything is Possible podcast. Today's episode really is a dream come true for me. So let me give you a little bit of context. So back in the day, a long time ago, when I was about 20 years old, I decided I needed to earn a little bit of extra money. So I had my first side hustle and I became a party planner for Ann Summers, which mum and dad, me being a convent girl, were a little bit shocked at, but I was determined that this was going to be my side hustle and it would buy me those extra pairs of diesel jeans. So that actually entered me into the world of events because as a Ann Summers party planner, you get invited to a national conference. So there was I, 20 years old, dressed up as a schoolgirl with 500 other schoolgirls and ascended on the Mere Resort for my first ever conference. And that was the day that I truly fell in love with events. Since that day, I have followed Jacqueline Gold, who is the chair of Ann Summers for many years. She's inspired me hugely, and I'm absolutely delighted to be sat with her today to talk about her life story and how anything is possible. So, Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a real pleasure. I'm really excited to do it.
Well, you have had such a colourful life, not only in business, but in personal. I think we'll touch the surface today, and you have told me to ask away, so I will, and hopefully we'll find some really useful information for our listeners today. So you got into the business of selling vibrators, really. Your dad had a publishing business that published sex magazines, and he then acquired 4 Ann Summers shops. So what was Ann Summers at that time? Who was Ann Summers?
Yeah, it was very different to what it is today. I mean, it's gone through an amazing transition, actually, which I am super proud of. So it was very much the sort of raincoat brigade and, we had these sex shops which were considered to be the respectable side of the sex industry. Yeah. But actually, they were still very intimidating for women to go in. And in those days, women didn't really have a lot of say in the bedroom. It was, if you did buy any underwear in the stores, it would be sort of scratchy nylon with sort of harsh lace reddish edging or something like that. So I guess when I got involved, that was what really, I wanted to change because I wanted women to feel empowered in the bedroom.
Yeah.
That's been quite an exciting and very colourful journey. And
so you started off as work experience. And was it purely, I need some work experience? Or was it actually you were quite interested in, what is this? What can...
So I was working for Royal Dalton at the time, which is like fine bone china. And, I enjoyed working there. It was at Medhurst, actually, in Bromley, which I think is now Primark. But it just wasn't stimulating enough for me. I was ambitious, I was very creative, and I liked being busy. I was used to being busy all the time. So I left there. I went to work at Ann Summers just temporarily. I wasn't planning on staying there for long because it was a real male-dominated business. As I said about the sort of very male-dominated, it was top shelf magazines, and the senior board were all sort of grey-suited men. Sorry, Dad, but, that was how it was. So I really had no intention of staying. But I was invited to a Pippa D party. Some of your listeners may remember them, but it was sort of like Next Clothing, I suppose, but in a sort of direct selling setting. Yeah. And I went along to this party, and I sort of remember sitting there on a sofa. Well, it was in a tiny room in a council flat in southeast London in Thamesmead. And I remember sort of driving there in my mustard-coloured Mini, walking to the top floor and eventually joining the party. And then suddenly I found myself drawing a picture of my husband's meat and two veg on a piece of paper on the top of my head, thinking, well, this isn't quite how I imagined my career starting. So, that was sort of, and for a 21-year-old, that was quite... I was quite sort of, this is quite shy. And, But it did get me thinking, and women at the party were sort of saying, why don't you do sort of Ann Summers parties? We'd love to be able to buy sexy underwear, but we're too embarrassed to go into a sex shop, which I could completely relate to. Yeah. And I started doing some parties myself, but obviously with limited stock, because the stock I had was aimed at men. Yeah. And, I did some parties for friends where I lived, which was in Biggin Hill at the time in Kent. And I remember women at the party sort of passing the products along like this, because obviously I'd switch the vibrators on and then sort of jiggle them along, sort of giggling and sort of nervous and excited, really, all at the same time.
Well, I mean, for people that haven't been to, I guess, the traditional Ann Summers party, having done it myself, you take all your wares, don't you, that you've got your little box of tricks, and then you all do parties, everyone has a drink, and then hopefully get the courage to buy things. And that's developed quite a lot, hasn't it, recently through COVID? You had to go virtual, didn't you, with the parties? I mean,
it was amazing during the lockdown, because, those businesses that survived were the ones that thought differently and were sort of thinking, okay, what can we do differently that plays into the environment that we now sort of unexpectedly find ourselves in. So actually, we now have 6 routes to market, which is quite something. I mean, it's really taken multi-channel to a totally new level. And the party plan is something, in fact, we don't call it party plan anymore. I know it was that when you started, but it's really a sisterhood. Come on. It's like, thousands of women empowering each other. It's really a totally different, setup. And the women that worked for us suddenly realised they couldn't hold the traditional parties anymore. So they were doing parties on Zoom. And women that had thought of joining us but hadn't thought, actually, my future's uncertain. I don't know whether my company's going to survive. I don't know whether my job's going to still be here. I'm going to try this and earn some money, sort of a bit like you did sort of all those years ago. And they were joining us in their droves. I mean, we went from 4,000 working ambassadors to 20,000.
Wow.
And it was something quite special. And not surprisingly, we completely sold out of penis pasta because, toilet rolls had sold out. Yeah. The traditional pasta had sold out. So we suddenly found people were coming to Ann Summers and buying penis pasta, which my 13-year-old daughter thought was hilarious, because there I was with Aldo Zilli, cooking up a storm, and she's recording me. She's going, have I got to eat this? I said, yes, you have. She said, this is gross. So
anyway. And didn't you as well come up with a new vibrator that was quieter because more people were having sex at home? Is that right?
Oh, totally. I mean, when we research our customers, there was a couple of things that we did. The Whisper vibrator was one of them. Yeah. And absolutely, quietness and powerfulness are the 2 most important ingredients that our customers require when buying a vibrator, for obvious reasons. So, yes, the Whisper, and people naturally were investing so much more in their sex lives because there was nothing else to do. Yeah. So, sex lives and investments in relationships was all sort of completely reinvented and changed. But and well-being as well. People wanted to invest more in their well-being, and we I know you're probably going to talk about it later, but I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2016. Yeah. So during that period, which is a long period of going through quite a traumatic, in fact, traumatic's not really the right word, brutal, I would say, treatment process, got me thinking. And I remember, seeing my oncologist, and nobody told me that this treatment was going to impact my sex life. Really? And yet when men go and talk to their doctors about prostate cancer or, any other, sort of conditions that they might have that affect their sex life. The doctors are very open, and talk to the men about, you must do this and this is going to happen, but nobody talks to women. And women's sex lives are really, really important. Actually made me quite cross because, I went through a period of thinking, there are certain things that happen. You're put on medication that makes you dry. You're put on if you have a mastectomy like I did, you start to think, is my husband still going to fancy me? Yeah. So it was really important. And I did a lot of research. I got involved with Breast Cancer Now, which is a fantastic charity that I'm sure most people have heard of. And we did a collaboration with them.
Oh, did you?
Yes. So, we brought out this new range called MyViv, which stands for My Very Important Vagina, obviously. And the, it was really it was products, it's still available. We sell it in Boots as well, by the way, not just Ann Summers and Feel Unique and a few other brands, because we want to make this as accessible as possible. Yeah. We also have a website for WOW, so that there is a community where people can exchange experiences. But I wanted to do something that went from therapy right through to pleasure. So it was a very gentle journey. And that includes dilators and other products that are not just toys, that aren't just sex toys, but it's a very gentle way of approaching it. And actually, I also spoke about it on Lorraine on This Morning, and on Lorraine. Yeah. And she's lovely, Lorraine Kelly. I mean, she actually said My Very Important Vagina twice, which I love her for, because, why shouldn't we talk about the vagina, which is so, so important for our well-being.
It's so interesting. And we're going to talk about the future and your future, but it feels, and it has felt for a long time, like the last few years listening to you, that the empowerment movement and everything that Ann Summers stands for over and above what it looks like on the tin is becoming more and more important to you.
It really is, because, I think one of the things that we did when we very first started is we had a purpose. Yeah. And there are not many companies that did that, other than probably Body Shop. And Anita Roddick. They really had a strong purpose. But, years ago, I started the Ann Summers direct selling 41 years ago. Yeah. So it really was about empowering women in the bedroom. Yeah. That's what we wanted to do, because there was nothing for women then. Yeah. And I wanted to put our stake firmly in the ground and really own it. But as time has gone on, that has evolved. Women are much more empowered in the bedroom. And I feel very proud that we have been really culture changing in society and in moving that forward. But also personally, in particular, I work very hard. In fact, funny enough, on when was it now? Tuesday, I went to the House of Lords to celebrate the Women's Business Council along with a number of other women, because, empowering women in the workplace now is something that I feel really passionate about. Yeah. Empowering women in business, which is how we got to meet, which was fantastic. And actually within Ann Summers, you mentioned Sian earlier, when we do our campaigns, we have 9 women in our squad. In our modelling squad, we have 9 women. They're not all models. Some of them are influencers. Some of them are, obviously Sian has got a prosthetic leg, and we've got all colours, all, women of different colour. We've got all sorts of diversity, a trans woman, Tallulah, who I absolutely love. That's what we stand for.
Well, when I was lucky enough to attend your International Women's Day brunch, actually, that you looked across the room and no one did look the same. And I met Sian Lord, who's also a podcast guest, and her story is really inspirational. And, it was great to see that diversity in the room. So, I mean, so interesting already. So I think this is right, in 1987, you became CEO of Ann Summers. What did it look like then? How many people worked for the business? What was the hierarchy?
Crikey, it was, I was made CEO, but I was so focused on what I was doing.
Yeah.
It was just a title.
Yeah.
I'm a woman on a mission. I know what I'm doing. I started actually when in my teens, I was incredibly shy.
Yeah.
But anybody watching this, you don't have to be super confident to be successful. You just need to have a passion.
Yeah.
And you need to have courage.
Yeah.
And the confidence comes later. It just comes naturally.
Yeah.
And, that's why I love, I'm going off piste a bit here, but that's why I love mentoring women.
Yeah.
Because, there are so many women that are, I couldn't do that. I don't act this way. I'm not, and when we see programs like The Apprentice or, Dragon's Den.
Yeah.
I think they're wonderful in the sense that they inspire people to be business people, but I think they can put women off because I think they make women feel like I can't be like that.
Yeah.
But you absolutely can.
Yeah.
And you can retain your femininity. And you can, I was at a meeting once, and this is years ago, when one male board member said to me, I find your quietness unnerving. We are so much more powerful than we realise.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't need to be a chest beater or a, table basher. You don't need to be any of those things. So I guess, in answer to your question, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of, around that time, I was having to use resources in the business. And those resources were very outdated compared to what we're used to seeing today. And thank goodness things are changing. We're not completely there yet. So please don't say job's done, because it isn't. But, the more that we have women like yourself that, do things like this and raise their head above the parapet and inspire the next generation, for me, that is truly, truly amazing. But it was very different in the sense that, there wasn't the mentoring that you have today. There weren't many women in business, and it was really the sort of women that, really were focused that
got ahead. Yeah. Wow. Powerhouse. So your sister got involved at what stage? When did that happen?
So Vanessa is 7 years younger than me.
Yeah.
She went to college. That didn't work out. And she then did the same thing, came and worked in the business for work experience. And if she was here now, she would say, I didn't even have an office.
Yeah.
I was sat on the floor taking calls. I had a telephone on the floor, no desk.
Yeah.
And I was taking calls from from customers, because it was we started literally from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, my first year's turnover was 83,000, and now it's, of course, a multi-million-pound company.
Wow.
So, and you have to pinch yourself sometimes, and I know she does. I mean, she is awesome. I mean, if you don't follow her on social media, you should do, because she is such an inspiring woman. She's such a people person. She has so many wonderful skills. And, I always think of Vanessa as being fantastic at bringing the best out of her team and taking them on the journey. There are a lot of women that aren't in the public eye that are doing some amazing things. And she really is one of them.
Yeah. And how the growth, did you have investment? How involved was your dad? How did you manage to scale financially?
So at the beginning, my dad wasn't involved at all, because we decided that we were going to make it female only.
Yeah.
So the grey-suited men that I spoke about earlier, I remember at the board meeting that I went to when I sort of talked about my idea, one man, Ron Coleman, his name was, threw his pen down on the table, stood up, threw his pen down on the table and said, well, this isn't going to work, is it? Women aren't even interested in sex. And I'm like, you're joking, you're kidding me. Obviously, I wasn't going to say that because I wanted the money, I wanted the investment. But I did think this obviously says a lot more about your sex life than it does about my idea. But, I went ahead with it. I started advertising in the London Evening Standard once a week. And I think they invested £40,000, which was nowhere near enough. Yeah. But at least I started advertising. Yeah. It was something very, very different. Nobody had done anything like this before. Yeah. I used to drive up to the Strand Palace Hotel in London, which is still there. Yeah. And the people that replied to the ad would come along and I'd take that box of tricks that you talked about and I'd talk about the idea. I'd recruit women in the room. I think one of my first women was a couple from Chelsea. So, it's very diverse demographics as well. Yeah. Two fairly comfortable women that just wanted to earn more money. Yeah. But more importantly, they just wanted to have fun. Yeah. While they were earning money. And of course, I recruited all of those women that were at the Thamesmead party. Yeah. Chris and Anne. And there was just a great team of women that gave me so much feedback and so much insight into what women wanted. And they were awesome. And then it just was like self-propagating. Women come to the party and then they would join, and then somebody would pop up in Melton Mowbray, and then we'd start advertising there, and then I think the next group of people were in Plymouth, and then there were it was just sort of
a domino effect almost. Was it 24/7 then? Those, has it continued to be? Was it 7 days a week, really long days? Like, how much of your time did it occupy back in the beginning?
It really was 24/7, partly because, I didn't have the team that I needed. When you grow that fast, and we were growing at 20% a year, which was fantastic, and this was around challenging times, miners' strikes and all things going on. But, we were growing really fast, and I was throwing people at the problem. And, you don't have the investment that obviously we have now, and therefore perhaps didn't have the quality of people that I always wanted. And that's probably actually one of my regrets, if I were to pick one, is that, I think if I had my time again, I would start recruiting. We've got some awesome people in the business now. I wished I'd done that earlier. But, this is what happens when you're learning. You learn as you go. And these challenges, every challenge is an opportunity to learn more.
Yeah. And then I guess kind of a popularity point for Ann Summers was the rabbit, which I'm sure people know, the rabbit was probably one of the most famous vibrators that was one in your product range. And then it ended up on Sex and the City, did it? So how did that all happen?
Yeah, I mean, that was quite incredible. I think it was Samantha that sort of locked herself away with the rabbit. And yes, they used one on their show, and you can imagine the sales and the selling out. And of course now we have the rabbit is iconic. I don't know if you noticed when you walked in. I've got a big statue of a rabbit. My doormat has got a rabbit on. There's rabbits secretly plotted around the house. So it really is quite iconic. And of course, we now have a rabbit family. So there are so many different types of rabbits. Obviously, the Whisper is a rabbit. We have a waterproof one. There are so many different types. I mean, if I could design one that put the bins out or caught spiders, it would just, our life would be complete.
Oh, wow. So that sort of brings me on to, I guess, your celebrity status in that, you have written a couple of novels, you've been on quite a few TV shows, documentaries. How did that all come about? Like, to go from running a business to a bit more, in the public eye?
Gosh, that's a good question. I mean, I think because I kept pushing boundaries. I had quite a few challenges during my career, and naturally those challenges attracted publicity.
Yeah.
But I was determined to stand up for what I believed in.
Yeah.
And I think that whilst the press initially were quite, negative, I think they then realised that actually the female part of the population loved what I was doing because they felt empowered. And it was a revolution. It really was revolutionary. And so, I just got started being invited to do, I did a show years ago called £1 Million Giveaway. I've more recently done some things that I only ever do things that I really think I'm going to enjoy or that are close to my heart.
Yeah.
So I did a programme recently called Womanhood, which was for the BBC. And that was all about women in the 21st century. Could have been a 6-part series, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was so interesting. And I'm sure, there'll probably be other things I'll do in the future.
Yeah. So you're now also, I think you've cited as being one of the top 10 women in retail. Is that right? Yeah.
I'm very blessed to have received a lot of awards and a lot of, I've been in the 40 under 40 and different things. So yes, I'm sure that's the case.
So with for our listeners that might be developing a business or have a small to medium large business and they want to become more well known in their industry, not just for their brand, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think you have to stand out from the crowd. I think that if you're talking about within your industry, obviously, whatever industry that is, you want to be part of that, part of the community of that industry.
Yeah.
So, I'm part of Retail Week. I'm invested in, I'm an ambassador for the Retail Trust, which is a charity. I've done a lot of work with British Retail Consortium. So you need to, have a profile within those industries. The direct selling, we used to be members of the Direct Selling Association. So all of these different industries will have their own networks, etc. So you have to be a player, have a presence. You need to be a contributor. There's no point, just, wandering in and wandering out. You need to contribute and be passionate about your industry. And then I think it's about having a point of difference. And that goes back to that purpose piece. We had that purpose. That purpose has evolved. And I think companies that have a purpose are something that, industry leaders are really interested in hearing more about.
That's so interesting because Make Events, my company, we've just won a National Events Industry Award, and we just recently got the feedback actually, and we won for a completely different reason to what I thought it would be, and it was because we do personal development for the team under the brand of Anything is Possible, and they said nobody else was doing that within the industry. So to your point, that obviously is a way of standing out. So that's great advice for anybody.
I think so, because I think in difficult times, and it's not over. We have we've been through obviously the COVID, we've been through lockdowns, we've been through Brexit, which has had, whether you supported it or not, it's had an impact. And we've been through, we're going through a war, for goodness sake. So goodness knows, there are challenges. I mean, during the lockdown, I was on the BRC calls weekly and listening to CEOs of heritage high street brands, with experiencing, quite considerable challenges. And that's going to continue. We're going to see some of those sad situations continue or situations, casualties, I guess I should say. So we have to adapt to this new environment.
Yeah.
And I think those companies that are adapting are the ones that are going, that they are thriving in this new, landscape.
Yeah. That we find ourselves in. So we are going to talk a bit more about Ann Summers to the end of the podcast, but let's get on to your personal life now. So you're married to Dan. How long have you been married?
I think we've been together for 22 years, and we've been married for about 11.
And where did you meet? How did that all happen?
So Dan is the best friend of my sister.
Yeah.
And of course, my sister is my best friend.
Oh,
so,
I didn't know that.
You know, we're an amazing four-ball.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Oh, how lovely. So we're going to talk about your journey to becoming a mum. Had you always wanted to be a mum, or had you just been completely focused on your career?
So I'd always been really focused on my career.
Yeah.
And I've been married twice.
Yeah.
So my first husband, we were together for about 10 years, and he found what I was doing very difficult. He was a very traditional, he was a Catholic boy who was used to men being the breadwinner. So, you know, we drifted apart, and we never had children because it just didn't feel right to me. So, when I met Dan, you know, when you're in the right relationship, I think, you know, it felt right. So, we now have a lovely 13-year-old daughter. So
you've talked quite openly that you conceive through IVF. Had you tried naturally before then, or was it just at that time that was the first step?
Yeah, we had tried naturally. And, you know, it's that whole IVF process, anybody that's been through it, it's, you know, it's quite draining and it's quite challenging on the relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, Dan and I split up for a couple of years during that process.
Really?
Because it was very difficult, the disappointment, you know, and IVF wasn't spoken about like it is today. It's so refreshing that we're now in a world where we do talk about, you know, mental health. We do talk about IVF. We do talk about disabilities. And all of these things are a challenge in people's lives that in the past, you know, we had been encouraged to sort of keep to ourselves, not to share. But I think that hopefully it is easier for couples now. But it was a difficult time.
And the journey from starting IVF to having Scarlett was how long?
So,
did you conceive abroad in the end?
We had, I can't remember over what period it was, but we had 3 goes. We had 3 tries in this country. Then we split up. And then when we got back together again, we just decided, we'd heard some great things about America, and we went to San Francisco.
Yeah.
And their whole outlook was very different. I'm a really positive person.
Yeah.
And the different clinics that we went to in this country had a much more, if it happens, whereas in America, it's when it happens. And that difference and you know, there's a lot more here. There is a lot more protocol, paperwork, red tape to go through. Yeah. And I'm not saying some of those things aren't important. They are. But when you're feeling stressed, you know, you want computer says yes, not computer says no.
You want anything is possible, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And when we went to America, it was just like being on a different planet, to be honest. It really was. And that changes your mindset, and that makes you more, I'm sure it positively impacts your outcome. And
did you have a plan B? You know, were you looking to adopt if you hadn't been able to conceive, or was it just this will work?
I don't know if we had a plan B. We had talked about adoption, but I don't think that was something we really wanted to do. I think, do you know what? I felt confident it was going to work.
Yeah, yeah. And then you obviously had Scarlett and Alfie, and I don't know if you want to touch upon what happened.
So I fell pregnant with twins, which was just the most amazing feeling because nobody expects to fall pregnant with twins. But sadly, at 12 weeks, and we didn't know what their sex were. We were told at 12 weeks that one of the babies had a fatal abnormality, which was devastating.
Oh, gosh.
Which was really devastating. And one of the babies was a healthy baby. So after the 12 weeks and until the twins were born, I had also been told that Alfie wouldn't, he would miscarry, basically. And as we got closer and closer, we got to, I think, if I remember rightly, I think they said that it would be around 19 weeks.
Yeah.
So I was, as a mum-to-be, I was trying to prepare myself for that, and I was grieving for my baby whilst he was in the womb, which, and I would talk to them both every day and, interact with them, but I was also grieving. So when it went past 19 weeks and nothing had happened, I hadn't mentally prepared for that.
Yeah, of course.
And none of the doctors told me that
this was
going to be possibly going to be a viable birth. So, it did come as a complete shock. And he was born with a condition called Alobar Hollenpressencephaly, which, just by the complication of how it sounds, is basically, he didn't have a brain, basically. He just had a stem at the base of the brain. And he had some abnormalities, but he when he was born, he was actually quite, I know this is on podcast, but he looked normal, sort of from the mouth down.
Yeah.
But he had the most beautiful, beautiful big blue eyes. And it's obviously, I'm slowing down because it's a little bit difficult, recalling those events. He was born in pain, which was horrendous for me.
I didn't know that.
No mother should ever have to hear her child cry in pain. It's very different to crying after they've taken their first breath. Had a cesarean, and he was taken straight into special care. And he obviously he spent I think about 3 months in hospital, and then he was transferred, or we arranged for him to be transferred to the children's home at Tadworth, which is just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And they specialise in looking after children with brain abnormalities and also children that have had, problems in an accident or in an operation or whatever. So they do some amazing work. And I truly believe that in his time there, he had, the best quality life that we and the team at the Children's Trust could give him. And there was lots of sensory experiences. Yeah. We took Scarlett in regularly, and she would, play with him on the mat. We took videos. So we have lots of memories for Scarlett.
Yeah.
But obviously, he was never going to have a long life. And, he survived for 8 months.
And I can't imagine the juxtaposition of emotions that would have, because not only the IVF and then to have your healthy baby and then to go full term, I just can't imagine. And a woman even as strong as you, what did you do to deal with that grief? Because you had a little girl to look after, didn't you, as well? So,
can I just say, first of all, there's no right or wrong way to dealing with this. And
100%.
Everybody deals with it differently.
Yeah.
So, we should never judge people on how they handle these situations. And for me, it was difficult because I had Scarlett.
Yeah.
The whole thing was bittersweet, and it still is today. Every time it's their birthday or it's Christmas, for Scarlett's birthday, we're having a party 1 minute and then going to the graveside the next. Yeah. So it's difficult. But I handled it by initially, obviously, I was at home grieving. I mean, he died in my arms. I knew I had to keep upbeat for Scarlett, and gosh, things would have been very different, I think, if I hadn't have had Scarlett, in all honesty.
Of course.
And there was one point, I think it was, I don't know how long afterwards, but I think my husband said to me, do you know what, Jack? I think you need to go back to work because I think you need some normality in your life. And I took his advice and I went back to work. I couldn't actually go to the Children's Trust for about 2 years because it was too painful.
Yeah, of course.
And then in the meantime, I just focused on building memories with Scarlett. And I had this pirate's chest made for Alfie and a princess one for Scarlett. And in the pirate's chest, I put all of his, memories, and I created lovely albums. And, we had nice things, photos created, and nice sort of pictures in her room. And as she got older, she might say to me, oh, I really miss Alfie, Mummy. And it was always just before she was going to bed, she would suddenly really miss him.
Yeah.
And then we'd always sit down and do a little prayer and talk to him, and we'd look at the brightest sky and the star, which was always Alfie, and, she'd kiss him goodnight. And even now, whilst, it chokes me a bit to talk about it, there is a positivity about it because we feel him around us. And I know that feels strange, but it's hard to describe, but we do feel his presence. And that gives us a lot of comfort.
God, I mean, your journey just it will inspire so many people on so many levels. And we haven't, there's other things that we're going to talk about. And I promise we'll get onto some more positive stuff. But, I do want to touch on what you talked about before, that you were diagnosed with breast cancer in 2016. I think it's important, again, these topics are going to resonate with so many women out there. And if anyone was set to inspire the nation with what you've been through, I definitely think you are. So for people listening, what happened? Did you feel unwell? Did you find a lump? How did it transpire that you were diagnosed?
So my husband was away. He was in Portugal on a golfing weekend, and I was, having a shower. And I recommend every woman should do this. So I had this alarm that I set once a month.
Oh, really?
To always test myself, and I always do it in the shower when you've got, a bit of soap on you. And I found not a lump, but I found what felt like unusual. It just felt different.
Yeah.
And I thought it was probably nothing. Didn't do anything about it. Then the alarm went off again the next month. Yeah. Did the test, did it again, and I felt it again. I thought, this isn't right. I was going to my doctor's anyway. So when I went, I said to her, oh, by the way, I've got this strange feeling. I'm sure it's nothing. And she said, well, whereabouts? And as I was trying to find it, I found this pea-sized lump underneath what I felt initially, which was the unusual tissue. And it was underneath. And she was brilliant. She got me straight over for a biopsy, had a biopsy straight away. It took a week to get the results. I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer in 2016. I have been on a very challenging journey because I was told by my oncologist that this was curable. And for anybody listening, if you've got stage 2, it really is curable. However, for me, my journey didn't go as straightforward. I went on a very brutal course of chemotherapy. I then had a lumpectomy. I then had radiotherapy. At the end of it, I had what they call a complete response to treatment. Now, if you have a complete response to treatment, that means the chances of it coming back are like 0.1%. So I danced my way out thinking this was never going to come back again.
Yeah.
2018, I was re-diagnosed, and it had come back in the same breast and also in the lymph nodes under my right arm. I then had to go through chemotherapy again, which was much more difficult than the first time. I thought that was bad enough.
Really?
I had 23 side effects the first time.
I've not known anyone in my family to have breast cancer, only what I see in the media. So what would be some, side effects we wouldn't know about maybe?
My God. I still have numbness in the tips of my fingers, numbness on your toes. I had sores on my shins, which was so unbearable. At night, I used to have to lay on a dog mat, one of those cooling mats.
Yeah.
The second time round, I virtually lost my eyesight through.
Really?
I mean, it's come back. Most of it has rectified itself.
Yeah.
To lose your eyesight and the feeling in your feet, I couldn't cross the road without help.
Wow.
That's not to mention the obvious that people are used to hearing about sickness, but they give you medication for that now, so you shouldn't experience. Although I did experience sickness after the treatment. If I walked into a hospital, I felt the nausea feeling.
Really?
There is a name for it when your brain associates going in a hospital with what you'd been through.
Yeah.
There were a number of very awful side effects. But so where was I?
So you're
Yes, I then had a mastectomy, not a double, a single mastectomy. And then I started to feel, I'd gone through all of the treatment, and now I'm, obviously going through recovery. But the second time round, where I'd gone from being a warrior the first time, the second time, there was anxiety.
Yeah.
Health anxiety.
Yeah.
Like, God, I thought I'd got... The first time I was so a woman on a mission.
Focused.
And actually, I did get the results that I expected. But I had this really unusual situation where it came back. Cut a very long story short, because my oncologist went through a court case where he was potentially going to get cut off, and I was having to completely self-fund. I'm now with a different oncologist, and what I now find out is that I hadn't realised at the time, but I was also diagnosed with the BRCA gene.
I was going to ask you whether it was genetic or...
So what the BRCA gene is, for anybody that doesn't know, it affects people with Jewish heritage in the main.
Now, I didn't know that.
Now, I'm C of E, but my father is half Jewish, which makes me a quarter Jewish.
Yeah.
So if you have any Jewish in you at all and you're a woman, please get tested.
I did not know that.
For the BRCA gene. It's BRCA is what the gene is called, is how it's spelt. And you may have heard in the media that Michelle Heaton, Angelina Jolie had this gene, and they had a double mastectomy.
Yeah.
So I now know that if I'd have known that at the beginning, I could have taken de-risking measures and I wouldn't be in the situation I'm in now.
So they didn't test you for that in the beginning then to see if
they
it was...
They did. But they didn't tell me the consequences. So I wasn't able to make an informed...
Yeah.
I wasn't able to make the right decision.
Yeah.
Once you're diagnosed with that BRCA gene, you have an 85% chance of having breast cancer or ovarian cancer, and in men, prostate cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So once I was diagnosed, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying, the one thing I feel that is good that has come out of this is my sister, who then got tested, also has got the BRCA gene, has since had a double mastectomy and her ovaries removed. And, if I I am a positive person, so I have to feel that something good has come out of my situation.
Yeah.
And I tell you, that is good, because when I look at her, I know that my situation has saved her life.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on from that, I've got this amazing oncologist now. Yes, I'm stage 3 / stage 4.
Yeah.
And he put me on a new drug, which is especially for people with BRCA gene.
Yeah.
And I am what they call in excellent remission.
Yeah.
Which people in excellent remission have a much better outcome. But more than that, and if you don't mind me leading on to something else,
absolutely,
because this has been life-changing for me.
Yeah.
There's 2 things that I've done that may inspire people that have had this. I mean, I've done loads of things in a wellbeing sense, but the one thing is that I went to the London Meditation Centre on a 4-day course of meditation. Now, I've always meditated, but I wanted to take it to another level. And what I learnt there was absolutely life-changing for me.
Really?
And I meditate now twice a day for 20 minutes. It is, when I wake up half an hour earlier and I sit up in bed and meditate for 20 minutes, it's nothing. It's nothing as in terms of time out of my day. And it has changed me in so many ways. I'm more focused. I'm more productive. My sleep quality is better. I don't need as much sleep. But the most important thing for me is that I no longer have negative thoughts about my situation. I no longer think, I've got stage 3, and that's all because of that oncologist who didn't tell me this and did this and did that, and a number of other things that he did, which, contributed to the way, I've been over the last few years. I don't want to be thinking negative thoughts. Yeah. I want to, do you know what this has done? This meditation, I am now living my best life. And if I hadn't have, whilst I wouldn't want to have breast cancer, if I hadn't have gone on this journey, I wouldn't have come up with my Viv. Vanessa wouldn't be in the great place she's in. I wouldn't be living my best life. And for that, I am extremely grateful. So I would really recommend that. The other thing I would recommend, and this isn't available on the NHS, but it isn't going to break the bank either.
Yeah.
But I have recently been on a trial with COC, which is, I forget what it's called, but if you look it up, it's oncology clinic, care oncology clinic, I think it's called. And they're doing a very successful trial at the moment where they give you off-label drugs, which are drugs like metformin. So they're standard drugs that are not licensed for cancer, but actually make the medication that you're on much more efficient and last a lot longer. So it's definitely worth investigating. Yeah. And I feel very, very lucky to be on that trial.
And just for our listeners, just remind us of what the meditation school is called, because I'm sure everyone will want to look it up.
Yes, the meditation school is called the London Meditation Centre. It's a 4-day course. Yeah. It's in, I think it's in Notting Hill.
Yeah.
And it's run by Michael Miller.
Yeah.
And Gillian, and that's Gillian with a J, Lavender, who's also written a book on why it's important to meditate. So even if you could, you decide not to go on the course, it's worth getting the book.
Yeah. Brilliant. We'll put that in the show notes as well. You look amazing. Is it right recently that you've gone vegan or cut out meat, made some changes to your diet?
So I absolutely did. So August last year, I read a book, which again I recommend, called Cancer Revolution, which really changed my thinking, particularly about food. And with my cancer, it's very much feeds off of hormones. So I decided that I was my aim was I wanted to remove anything with hormones from my diet. Yeah. So I wanted to become a vegan. That is more challenging, actually, than you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
So I would say I'm probably, I'm 100% vegetarian.
Yeah.
And I'm probably 80% vegan because I am struggling with the cheese and finding a good alternative.
Yeah.
I'm using plant-based milk. There's a milk called MYLK, spelled
I know
MYLK.
the one. Yeah,
so I use that. And I'm doing okay with creme fraiche and things like that.
Yeah.
But cheese is quite difficult because it's important to have protein in your diet.
Yeah.
So I'm sure actually that is going to get better. I've heard there's a vegan festival, which I'm dying to go to and try out some different things. But I now grow my own vegetables and, I cook them, I grow them and cook them. That feels really, obviously you can't get more organic than that. So my diet has really changed. I have a green juice every day. I eat a lot of fibre. I eat loads of vegetables.
Yeah.
When anybody used to say to me about having a salad, I'd say, no, I don't like salads. Because whenever I thought about salad, I thought about lettuce, tomato and cucumber just on a plate, and that was it. But when you become an actual vegetarian and you start looking up what foods you can cook, even salads, in this weather, you can create some amazing, tasty salads that are so easy to do and so quick to do. And actually works really well with the family because I'll just adapt my meal to be vegetarian and I'll adapt their meal to include vegetarian. So they still get, if, for example, they're going to have, I'm going to do them salmon for dinner. Yeah. I'll cook them salmon with salad, one of my nice fancy creative salads, new potatoes, and I'll have grilled halloumi. So, we make it's still a family dinner and it's, very healthy. So I feel really good actually about the way I eat. It's probably the healthiest I've ever ate.
And do you like a glass of wine or champagne, or can you leave that?
So I am allowed to drink. I mean, I do, but I don't drink a lot, nowhere near as much as I used to.
Right.
And I think that, I just, there's lots of reasons for that. One is, that less is better. Yeah. Secondly, certain medications make it a little bit less tolerable. Yeah. So, you find a balance.
Yeah. So moving back to Ann Summers, you've recently changed your role slightly to become chair. Is that right? And Vanessa is CEO. So what's that change? Explain that to us.
Well, we have... First of all, we have some amazing, amazing people in the business. Our board is about 80% women. Our senior leadership team is about 60% women. We have some great talent that we're building up through the pipeline, and I'm very proud that we've achieved that. It's something that's really important. And actually, we don't do it because they're women. We do it because they are the best person for the job. Yeah. And there's no box ticking at all. So Vanessa was previously joint MD. Vanessa and I have both been through a lot. I've obviously been through my struggles. Vanessa has been there supporting me every step of the way. And I've been doing this for, since 1981. I think it's time that I don't want to step out of the business at all, but I really want to focus on the things that really matter. We've got some great projects going on at the moment, projects that, we are progressing. And it's nice to step away from some of the detail and allow others the chance to flourish. And, we have got some great people that we're empowering. And, I've just come off a meeting actually before we met, a shareholders meeting, and talking about, what our plans are for the next few years. So it's just really it's about getting the balance right. And I think as you get older, you do get better at doing that, and you do realise that we love what we do. We're passionate. We want to carry on doing what we're passionate about, but we also have to take care of our well-being, and we have to get that life-work balance right.
Yeah, exciting. I've met you a few times now. You come over as so lovely and so kind, but I'm sure that over the years you've had to be quite ruthless. How would you describe yourself as a leader?
I'm very inclusive. Mm-hmm. I like to have, I like to involve people. I'm not somebody who, wants to work solely on their own. I think it's important to bring the team along with on the journey. I equally don't like yes people. That frustrates me.
Yeah.
And I don't mind people that have a different point of view. I like people at the table that are contributing. And I think, a piece of advice for other women, particularly listening, this is, when I think about earning your seat at the table, I'm not talking about the person that talks the loudest in the room. I'm not talking about the person that, raises their voice, gets angry, or tells the best jokes. I'm talking about the person that has done their homework, that comes to the table and comes up with new ideas. Even if I don't want to go with that idea, those are the people that you're going to remember.
Yeah.
So that is really important to me. I'm very engaging with my team. My door is always open. I'm not afraid of confrontation. I don't actually see it as confrontation. I see it is what it is. So what would be a confrontational situation if something's not working out, whether that's with a team member or whether it's with somebody that we're doing business with? I'll always give those people the opportunity to, to rectify things or do things differently. It's always a collaborative approach. But I'm certainly not afraid of confrontation. I'll always do what's in the best interest of the company, and what how I see the future being.
Yeah.
I would also add, that would be my business approach, I think, my leadership approach.
And you are inspiring many other women with your WOW winners, of which I was hugely lucky to be a winner last year. I would rather you tell everybody, because I bet there are loads of people listening that maybe don't know about it or do and think, how could I be part of that programme? So would you like to just share with the listeners what that is and how people can get involved?
Yes, I would. So I stumbled onto social media, I don't know, some 10 years ago, maybe longer. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was sort of, but I did notice that my followers were growing and growing and growing. And when I sort of looked into who my followers were, there were, obviously people that knew of me, friends or people that had maybe seen me on something or other. And then there were a lot of West Ham fans, because my father is co-chairman of West Ham Football Club. So I had a lot of fans, still do. But mostly were women starting up their own business, women that had enough of the glass ceiling, had enough of, some of all the bullshit, excuse my language, that goes on in some industries and in the workplace. And they were sort of asking for advice, sharing what they were doing. And I just thought, there's something here. I'm trying to reach out to as many people as I can. And it's almost impossible to keep up with the volume. And then I just decided to do this competition. So called it WOW, which stands for Women on Wednesday. Yeah. So every Wednesday, women tweet me or post to me about their business. And I look for the ones that really stand out for me. Those are the ones that have got a great website. Those are the ones that I feel have the opportunity to upscale in their business and grow their business. And also those that are just doing something a bit differently to everybody else. And then I announce my winners, which, as you know, they get a badge. So they then become an award-winning business. They join a Facebook community where they engage with each other. And the top 3 overall for the year, which I do every year, which, Holly, you were an absolute no-brainer in my mind, where I take out the winners to a mentoring lunch. Sort of a networking lunch. Yeah. I mean, it was amazing, wasn't it?
Really
and
great.
Actually, I learned so much from those lunches as well, and I just enjoy them so much. And you also, and not just from my experience, but from each other's, you were inspiring each other, which was just amazing. And then we've yet to do the learning day at our head office, which is where I invite my winners down to the head office. And they get to meet with some of our experts. You'll spend the day with us, meet with our experts, and it's sort of pretty much tailored to you. And you get a big tour of what Anne Summers looks like and the operation, which is good fun. And a goodie box at the end of it, which is always a Brucey bonus.
Well, we're going to conclude the podcast in 1 minute, but just for any of those listeners today, maybe those women out there that are wanting to introduce a little bit something extra into the bedroom, a bit nervous of going into an Ann Summers store, what's your advice to them? How do they go about ramping up their sex life?
So you're saying they're nervous about going into the store. So if you're not nervous of going into the store, I just mentioned this, our teams are trained, this is every day to them, and they'll, give you as much advice as you want, and you will feel so comfortable. And they really are experts in their field. So it won't be, I promise you, it's not going to be embarrassing like you think it is, like you think it might be. You can obviously get in touch with one of our ambassadors. So that could be a personal one-to-one over Zoom or on the phone if you feel more comfortable with that. You can have fun at a party. Or if you just want to go on the website, then I would suggest probably if you are a newbie to Ann Summers and a beginner, I'd probably suggest something like the ears. Now, we've all heard of the rampant rabbit.
What are the ears? So
the ears are literally the ears of the rampant rabbit. So it's probably about that big, about 3 inches.
Yeah.
And they've got the most amazing vibrating ears. So it's very small, perfect for travel, holidays, and something that, isn't, it's a sort of a gentle introduction for you and your partner, or just you.
We are inspiring on so many levels today. Meditation, vibrators, setting up your own business. Jacqueline Gold, there is a saying that Oprah Winfrey says, which is, your legacy is every life you touch. I am one of millions that I'm sure you've inspired over the years. Every time I've reached out to you on Instagram, you've answered questions for me. You've helped me on some personal things. You are just a little powerhouse. And to think that everything you've been through, I feel like, what you've been through is obviously you're sharing that with the world so openly. And I will imagine everybody that listens to this will take something away, and you might inspire somebody to go for IVF, somebody to check, that setting your alarm on you. I mean, that's just genius. I'll be dying to hear what this podcast inspires, because I'm sure it will be so much. But anything is possible is the theme of the podcast. Please tell us, what does anything is possible mean to you?
Well, for me, I tell you what I think this means, because it does resonate with me. And that is, I think it's important not to let perceived barriers stand in the way of blue sky thinking. And it's something I say often, but if you write that down and then think it back, we should think about sky's the limit and then work towards that goal. So often people say to me, well, I can't do that because I haven't got the funds, or I can't do that because I don't have the right people. So they're putting blockers in the way right before, that's for people that are already in a business. And then, of course, there's people like you and I who, I left school with no O-levels because I had O-levels, but I had no A-levels. I was painfully shy. I had a very difficult childhood. And yet, here I am, no training, but I had a dream. And if you've got the dream, just follow that dream. Everything else will follow. And can I just give one tip?
Please.
Because anybody that's sitting there listening and thinking, well, it's easy for her to say, what I want you to do, and I often give this advice because I did it for myself once and it worked brilliantly. If you are one of those people that just feels that you don't have the confidence, please send an email to yourself with all the things that you've achieved in your life, both personal and professional. Doesn't matter how small they are, write them all down. I only want you to write down the good things that you've ever achieved. And then when you have when you have a wobble, or you're going into your first board meeting, or you're going to a networking event, or a situation, or you're doing an important pitch, we spoke about that, didn't we? So just read back that email to yourself, and I promise you it's so powerful, and it just gives you the lift and makes you think, my God, I am awesome. I really am awesome. Look at what I've achieved. And we don't remind ourselves enough of what we've achieved in our lives and what we are actually really capable of.
That's another bit of brilliant advice. Anything is possible because you've been my hero for so long. To be sat with you in your house the day before my business's 10th anniversary is an absolute dream come true. I cannot thank you enough for welcoming us here, and I cannot wait to hear the feedback from our listeners. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Holly. It's been an absolute pleasure.